Hello and welcome back to the Brompton Guy. Today I thought I would do a nice simple episode and look in on my 2-month review on my Brompton P Line. This was a spur of the moment purchase really for me, and I did use the justification of a sportive coming up to warrant the cost of it. As we all know watching this video, the P Line is an expensive bike to own, and I'm hoping with this review, by the end of this episode, you can get a fair conclusion of where the P Line might sit in a line for you, and is it worth you to invest in the P Line over the C Line. Firstly, I just want to put out the type of person I am is the type of person that likes to tinker. As soon as I got this bike, I had to tinker a little bit just to make it a little bit more special for myself. So it has not everything standard on it, but I'm going to try and give my justification for what I've done and where it's went. First and foremost, I'm going to start from the up to down. So the very first thing, as we all know that I like to change, is the handlebars themselves. On the bike, as I said, on this one I went with the Ergon GP2 because the handlebar itself allows the bike to fold. Now this one did come with the ultralight grips on it, which from the little brief moment I used them were nice, but I do find it difficult to get comfort on a bike when I don't have the little bull horns in front. It's probably came from the multiple years of cycling on a standard road bike to work and having the drop bars, but I just generally find it much easier to hold the bike and rock it this way than hold it that. But the Ergon GP2 is honestly, without a doubt, has to be one of the best handlebar grips for a Brompton. Fair enough, it can work on any bike, but it does work fine on the Brompton. But you do have a weight penalty for the extra plastic on it and the extra comfy grip compared to the ultralight grips. But they are, to me, an absolute must add on out of anything else that I'm going to discuss here today. I personally went with the high bar. As we can see there, its stem is slightly raised up. As we all know, I am 6'2" in size, and I do feel that if you are going to get a Brompton and you are over 6 foot, it does make sense to get the high bars. It's significantly more comfortable than the medium bar to me, and the reason I know that is because when I hired a Brompton C Line, it came with the medium bars, and I could feel myself hunching a lot more than what I'm on here. And bear in mind at the heart this is a commuter bike, but it does mean, in what I've played with, is if I want to get into a really low racy performance bike, I just drop the bars at the front and then I can get my spine into a better aerodynamic position. That's not going to apply to the masses, but it's nice to know that my commute position is nice and high and proper, but it has the flexibility and the extended reach to drop the bars down in order to put it in what I refer to as race mode. For myself, I've removed the bell. I've added a Garmin Mount in, and I've added a light mount because it is a commuter bike. All of them work faultlessly and to me are essential for my commute. The only thing I've not quite worked out yet is I've had to rig the cat eye underneath the handlebar, and it does have a tendency, if I'm climbing, for my knee to hit it and it just pops straight out. There is a couple of different rigging methods I'm looking at, but at the moment it's really not too big an issue, but just something I am aware of that it can happen. So I'd much rather be able to get that light up above the bar rather than underneath the bar, but aesthetically it actually looks pretty good and folds really well with it under there. As we come down to the front wheels, I was dubious about this Mudguard here and what its performance was, because I was very impressed with the C Line Mudguards on the new one themselves. I felt it kept me really dry, even in comparison to my commuter road bike, which had full-size Mudguards on it. These are absolutely phenomenal at keeping the bike clean and dry, and even your legs, you get nothing, and that's probably with the benefit of having the smaller commuter wheels. As I say, the majority of people probably commute on a 700c road bike, but I feel with these wheels like that doesn't drag up as much water, and the coverage is so much better that you are always getting into work, even on a really wet day, with dry feet, even without gaiters. So I'm so impressed, and even like from a maintenance cleaning point of view, I just have to give this a light dab down with a cloth, and the only bits that hold dirt is away at the very front of the mudguard, and the little bit of the header here is the only bits that get little sprays. So I'm so impressed with the efficiency of the Mudguard. Now I do believe the C-lines are great also, but because I've been commuting with this, it's just been phenomenal as a commuter. And these are a different design Mudguard than the C-line themselves. Both perform well, but I've been commuting with this now for 2 months. I've also done other rides. I think I've done just over 200 miles on this bike already, which is actually quite mind-blowing. And so far, everything front end wide has performed really good. The other thing, which I don't think is in shot, I've added is an extended stem clamp, which extends it out, so when it does fold down, it gives me that little bit of extra room just so I can sit the brakes a little bit more comfortably at the back. That was by, in fact, I think every edition I've had is by London Craftwork on it. I believe that's what the name is, and I've been pretty impressed with the quality of it all so far. Moving down, all the cabling's been fine, it's all standard, nothing's changed. When we come to the chainring, still got the standard one on it, but I will be putting a 40 on this for when I do my big hilly event. And I've went with the Dior XT, two bolt pedals. I've commuted on road cleats for years and years, and I cannot believe it's took me this long to find the benefit of this. It's just a way more practical pedal for a commuter bike. And for me, it's again a very close, much required addition to what the bar grips are, mainly for the hills alone. Like, the power you can get out a clipless pedal is really, really good compared to the standard folding pedal. And I just find them so much more comfortable myself, but that's going to come down to preference. But I quite honestly couldn't picture the bike without these. From a commuting point of view, I believe it's the 50 that comes with standard, and that's absolutely fine. I find my gear range is enough, and I've got a couple of hills, so I actually think that works all well. If we talk about the lacquered finish, obviously a big selling point to me was the lacquered finish itself there. And it just looks even better. I mean, it looks great at the moment, it's hard to capture in camera, but I feel actually that coming home at night, the lacquer looks even better with the street lights. Like, the really dark reflective shade it gives is just absolutely beautiful, and it's the one thing that is honestly, I'm just so grateful I bought this emerald finish when I did, because it was a limited run and for my liking, it's just absolutely tasty. But the finish is held up well, there's really nothing on it, and I don't want to say I abuse the bike, but I've already done over 200 miles on this bike, and it's only just over 2 months old. The chain itself, so the chain is the ultralight chain, and I was away for a while, I've had a lot going on. I didn't maintain the chain. I left it for probably close to 2 weeks, and to say the chain had seized up is probably an understatement. The pedals wouldn't even rotate, all the links were so hard. I have never had anything like that happen on any other bike, so it really caught me off guard, but I knew I could clean it, so I had to obviously clean the chain fully, degrease it all, grease it all up, and it's been fine. But this chain, out of any chain I've had, requires the most maintenance. It needs to be cleaned, it needs to be lubricated, and personally myself, I'm lubing it once a week, and I'm probably going to give it a deep clean every 2 weeks sort of from there. But again, I'm putting quite a fair bit of miles on it, so that's fair enough. Moving to the seat post tube, as I said in an earlier video, I've switched this out of a titanium one, again with the London Craftwork, and I have no complaints with it. It's slightly larger than Brompton's extended post, which means as a 6'2" pert rider, it fits me just perfectly, and more importantly, I've not had any slippage. Anyone who follows this channel knows I've had constant issues with Brompton seat post slipping down. I don't know if it's the post itself, or I don't know if it's because the clamp is so new, but riding this, I don't feel like my position's going off. So if it's the bike or any change like that, it's just absolutely phenomenal. The Superlight Saddle on here is phenomenal. It is a go-to saddle for me. Now, I've used the same saddle for years and years and years, but the Brompton Superlight Saddle, from a level of comfort, and even doing, I think the longest I've done in this was about an 80-mile ride. The saddle itself was really, really good performance. So for me now, even across my actual road bike, I'm probably going to be sticking to the Superlight Saddle by Brompton. So kudos to that. It is expensive for what it is, but it is a really, really good and comfy saddle. Moving on, we have the advanced roller wheels. Now I'm hoping it picks up this sound. So the advanced roller wheel itself doesn't run on a smooth bearing, it's a bushing also. And I find when I'm pedaling, my trousers can catch this, and you get that noise as you go up. And it's just a noise, but I would much rather have the easy wheels, I think, on here than that noise, because again, anyone who follows me knows I don't like my bike making noises that it shouldn't make. So I've thought about switching these out with the easy wheels for the bearings, but they're lower in height and I already feel the clearance is a little low, and these haven't actually caused me any performance issues. I will say though that the roller rack, which I'll come on to in a second, only briefly cover, makes it roll amazingly. It is so easy to roll and navigate with it, but just with this and the standard wheel that came on the Mudguard, it doesn't roll very well. It's not any better than the C Line in my opinion, and you still need to lift the bike, in my opinion, rather than roll it. But I will come on to that because a lot of people will be interested in the P Line from a weight point of view. It is the lighter bike than the C Line. My argument, again, only touching on it, is like, once I fully load all this up, it probably weighs about the same as a C Line. But it's still not a bike you can carry. I'm not an out of shape person, but I struggle carrying this in one hand for longer than a minute. Like, my arm gets really, really sore. And I thought, yeah, I can live with it. It's just hauling a little bit into working out. But it's when you go out of your norm and maybe you say, I'm going to the shops, or well, actually I'm going to go meet someone for dinner, and then you're like, oh, it's now became a real pain to carry. But the roller rack, and I hate to say it because 140 quid is a lot of money, but if you are planning to use this as a commuter and as like a main bike and not just a, I don't want to say joke bike, the roller rack is probably one of the best £140 you can spend, because I don't get worried about lifting it. I put it on its wheels and it's just an absolute pleasure to roll. And with the bit of bag I've covered in my most recent episode that was just released, it can go into shopping mode, it all stays in one package, and all this folds down and still wheels as one. So before I had the rack, I was doing a rucksack, and I'm never a fan of commuting with a rucksack just from the sweat in the back. So this has been amazing. And I do get, when you're already spending around 2,400 on a bike, to add the extra 140 is a lot of money, but it really does go a long way, especially because I would imagine a lot of people buying these aren't going to want to lift it, or will struggle lifting it up sets of stairs or lifting it for an extended period of time. So this just gives you the peace of mind on that side there. In terms of the rear wheels, we have the 4-speed derailleur set up at the back. Now this was the one thing before buying the bike that I already knew had quite a bit of criticism on it. And as someone, again, I've been using road bike for years, I'm very comfortable setting up derailleur setups. This is not the greatest. I've had to consistently tweak this, take it, reset it back to factory, and constantly tweak it as I go. For the last week, it's not jumped anything, but it has taken a good bit of know-how and confidence to do it. Now, I would always pride Brompton on out of the box, ready to go, no issues for a good while. This setup probably isn't the best for someone that doesn't really have the confidence to run and maintain it. Now, I would say it's simple to do, but if this is your first ever derailleur setup to manage, it's probably a little bit overwhelming when you've spent about 2,400 on a bike. You don't want to have any issues in the first week, and I could imagine if you went comfortable, within a month you'd probably be back at your dealership being like, the gears aren't shifting. And part of that probably is braking, but it's just nowhere near as efficient or as smooth as the internal hub itself. but I would still always take it over the internal hub, mainly because I like to see what's going on and I can maintain it myself a little bit easier. But if you're not that comfortable with setting up gears, or you get worried when stuff shifts, this is probably not going to be your best friend on that side. Now again, this is only 2 months in. I've already done 200 miles on it, so I have been treating it a little bit hard. But I don't see this being as efficient as the rest of the bike yet, but time will tell, and it'll be interesting to know what happens when I take this down to the 40 tooth chainring to see the difference on it. The other thing I have added, which is quite hard to see here, is I've put a little carbon chain protector on it. So when the bike is folded, the actual clamp sits on the carbon and the chain can't slap on there. All I am is doing a bit of cosmetic protection, and that was crazily overpriced for what it is, but it's been on, it's not shifted, I've washed it and it doesn't move, so far I'm pretty impressed with it. At the back here, I've had to temporarily put a rear light on over the reflector on the advanced roller rack, but I have just ordered a clip that goes on the back of the bag, so that will solve I guess cosmetic issue just because it doesn't look as good. But that's the only disadvantage with the way that I swivel the bag round, is the fact that I can't mount really the light up here where I normally do. So down there works fine, I've just had to buy an additional attachment to it though. And I think the last thing that brings me up to, from just talking over everything, is I did complain about having the shifter on the left hand side. Now I've shifted with gears on the right hand side, and I think like anything that's natural to me, but having only used this bike, I have no issues with the left shifting at all. I've got really used to it. It's really natural. I guess if anything, I'm more worried about when I go back to a road bike, if I'm going to be constantly just shifting up and down my front derailleur on there. But I've actually found a nice way that I can just shift with my thumb, which is quite nice. And I think the shift is actually pretty well made. It always kind of just works, apart from the index and the cable tension, obviously on the rear. Apart from that, obviously, I think it's a great bike. I really, I guess I should probably try and wrap up a conclusion now. That's me highlighted, I think, everything that I feel is important to talk about. Let me just talk about Bromptons as an overall whole. So I've actually had a brand new C Line which came from the Brompton subscription, and had that for 3 months. Was using that as my daily commuter, but I would generally find it a little bit, I say a little bit, it was definitely more sluggish than your standard 700C commuter. It felt heavier and it felt like a lot of work, even though most of these similar attachments were on that bike. So even commuting, I'm like, it's felt like a massive downgrade from my 700C. I have the added benefit of the security of being able to take it in work. But with the P Line, when I cycle this, it genuinely makes me feel like $1 million. I love looking down at the paintwork, and that feeling alone is just amazing to have. Now, even if I look at a time difference, this will match my 700C road bike when I was commuting to work, so it matches the time. The C Line was on average about 2 to 2.5 minutes slower over a commute that normally takes me 25 minutes. But this, I honestly think, is so similar to a normal conventional road bike, mainly because it is that little bit lighter. I feel that you really do notice, especially because on the C Line I didn't lug weight on the C Line and it was just a really heavy experience. This will give you a much closer to traditional road bike feel with the weight. It's so hard to warrant if this price point is right for you or not. I wouldn't deem myself as a serious cyclist, but I enjoy cycling and I enjoy performance. I enjoy the small silly stuff that people probably see as pointless, like your carbon wheels and stripping weight off it and doing silly stuff like climbing the double digits on climbs. So I like that, and this bike really lets me do that. But there's no way I could really recommend to someone that doesn't overly watch their speed and just wants to get there, this bike personally. However, if you want, I'm going to have to say it, the best of Brompton, this is significantly better than a C Line if you care about performance, hence the performance line of it. It's even the small subtle stuff, like on the M line, and before it was an M line, when it was a C line, I upgraded to the front suspension block. As I say, you lose a lot of power from a bike that isn't stiff, and the rear triangle on the suspension block really kills that. But this bike, being titanium and with the new block, is super stiff and super responsive. And as someone that does a fair bit of cycling, you really, really, really do notice it. And I would just love the opportunity at some point to check what the T line's like, because it's going to be even stiffer than this and lighter, so I can only imagine it's good overall. But yeah, the bike is phenomenal. Would I pick it in future over a C line? Could I warrant the cost? I think if I know I'm commuting with this for the next couple of years, then yes. If you're unsure on Brompton, I would still always start with the C line. Always, always, always start with the C line. But if you have a C line and you really enjoy it, your next bike should consider a P line. This has just been a very open and honest reflection. It's not even overly an edited video. I just felt I wanted to get my honest thoughts across about the P line, because it's probably one of the stickiest subjects of of the Brompton community and weighing up. Is the P line even worth the extra cost? Yes, it is, but I'd say only if you're really passionate about cycling. But I think that's all I've got there. Any questions on the P line or anything you want to ask, you know, the comments are always there. As always, thank you so much for watching the channel and supporting this. If there's anything else you want me to cover in the upcoming future, let me know. And as always, have a good night, and I'll see you in the next one.
He's there!